Welcome to video number 50 of 50, part 4 of 4, the last video of a series called Freemasonry and Satanism. At least the last part of the first 50. I may go on and do 51 and 52, but they won't be of anything. They'll just be go on forever, maybe. I keep reading books and I'll keep making videos of the book reviews related to the Freemasonry and Satanism issue, which I believe from my videos I've been tying this together pretty well. Actually, much to my own surprise, it fit together very well. Reading Morals and Dogma from Albert Pike and the many other books on psychic research, black operation projects by our CIA, FBI, NSA, and foreign secret service agencies worldwide. All kinds of undercover projects that are just beyond imagination. Spooky. With that said, continuing on with the facts of science fiction, thought I'd just read a little bit from this and then continue on with the book review and try to review the last of the books that I reviewed during the 49 previous series of the videos. So in this particular article I'm going to read, it's something called slate writing. And what they would do is they would take a letter asking questions, seal the letter in an envelope, and then hand it to the psychic, the medium, and she would put it between two slates that were hinged together, like this book, and put the letter in between, put the letter in between the two slates and close the slates. And then she would go into her trance, and apparently from some kind of magical method, the spirits that have died, people who have lived, who were friends of the people who wrote the letter, asking the questions. When the seance was over, the letter was opened, and in writing were the responses, if you can believe that. So here we go. Vice Admiral Moore had very many seances with these two mediums. In fact, he went to the United States in 1909 purposely to see them. He had heard of their phenomena through a letter written to him by a gentleman of considerable position and influence in Canada, who had himself visited them. So there were these two sisters who were mediums. The letter, dated October 19, 1908, described so clearly the nature of the phenomenon that it was well worth quoting. He wrote, "Our next experience was at Chicago with the Bangs sisters, B-A-N-G-S sisters, of whom we had heard both good and evil reports. We were, in consequence, specially on the alert. I will leave you to judge of what we obtained there. We were told by friends who had visited them to write our questions before going to the house, and place them with a number of blank sheets of stamped or initialed paper inside an envelope gummed and sealed. This we did using paper from a Toledo hotel that was decorated with a gilt monogram." So they were using some of the hotel paper, which had a monogram on it. "We reached Chicago early on the following morning. At 9 o'clock, we had found the Bangs' residence and secured an immediate seance before the arrival of their numerous clients. We sat with Miss May Bangs. To this day, she is ignorant of our names or where we came from, nor had she any inkling of our visit or its purpose. We accompanied her each in turn into a comfortable little boudoir, little room, on the sunny side of the house, looking out on a bit of lawn. The only window remained open. In the center of the room was a table 4 feet square, covered with woolen cloth. The medium sat opposite to me, about a foot or more from the table. This is page 192 in the Facts of Psychic Science. So the medium sat opposite to me, about a foot or more from the table. The only object on the table was an open inkstand. I said I had brought with me some questions in a sealed envelope and hoped to obtain replies through her mediumship. She said, "We will try." She then fetched a pair of hinged slates, the frames of which were covered with dark cloth, gave them to me, and resumed her seat, saying, "Place your letter between the slates, close them, secure them with these stout rubber bands, lay the slates on the table in front of you, place both hands flat on the top of them." The medium's instructions having been carried out, we engaged in general conversation. 3 times she interrupted to talk, to ask, "Is this name or place spelled correctly?" Foreign names mentioned in my questions, showing that some knowledge of what I had written was reaching her. If I asserted or made a slight correction, she would write on a pad resting on her knee, and then resumed our conversation where it had dropped. About half an hour was thus spent, when 3 distinct raps were heard and felt by me. Proceeding apparently from the center of the table, Miss Bangs then said, "The seance is over. You have obtained what you are to get. You may open your envelope now or later." I opened the hinged slates, found the envelope as I had placed it, untouched, still sealed, thanked the lady, and left the room, with my brother passed in for his turn. So his brother was going in to do one also. While waiting for my brother in the adjoining room, I slit open the end of the envelope with my penknife, and found, besides my questions, 9.5 pages of the blank paper covered with writing in ink, as if with a steel pen, duly numbered, and written at the instance of the spirit friend to whom I had addressed 4 out of 5 questions, signed in full. So his deceased friend, his dead friend, wrote on the letters inside the sealed envelopes the answers to his questions. The replies were categorical, giving or confirming information of great value to me personally, referring to facts and happenings of over 40 years ago, which the spirit and I alone were aware of, and adding the names of individuals whom I had not named in my questions, but whom we both knew in the past and who had participated in the events referred to by me. The reply to the 5th and last question was in the form of greetings from spirit friends who were known to me when they were in Earth's life, when they were alive, and now come to me as so-called guides. When one writes rapidly, a blotter is necessary at the turn over to a new page. So back then when they used those ink pens, you dip in a blotter, you write, and of course then it runs out of ink, and you got to re-dip it so you can see the heavy ink get less dense. So he says here, when one writes rapidly, a blotter is necessary at the turn over to a new page. This apparently was not required by the spirit writer, for the ink is the same depth of black at the foot as it is at the top of the pages. The handwriting of the last message and each signature at the bottom of it differs from that which contained replies to my first 4 questions. It is not claimed that this writing is done by spirit friends themselves, but in that dictation by the medium's control, who has become expert in the form of manifestation. Can telepathy account for these replies? Can it explain the transfer of the ink from the bottle on the table to the folded blank pages within the sealed envelope, between the slates under my hands? It would take a very fast writer at least an hour and a quarter to write what the spirit performed in half an hour. and this is leaving out consideration the deliberation required for penning the involved replies to my question. I regret that they are of such personal nature that I cannot even send you extracts. My brother's replies covered about 13 pages. Among them were 3 signed notes from 3 different spirit friends who had come to him in my house here or at Detroit or at the Johnson in Toledo. So that's fascinating. So the medium was talented enough to, instead of doing a seance where she speaks or an apparition appears or automatic writing on the table, she could magically make the letters from the spirit world, replies to the questions. She could ink the letter, transform it from the bottle on the table, inside the envelopes, sealed in slates, and under the person's hands. If you believe that, it's pretty strange. So let's get on to this video of the book reviews. So I thought I would do one thing before I start with the book reviews. I would go back to Dr. Stephen Greer of Exopolitics, because I recently got this email, dated 9/19 on the bottom there. And we know in one of my previous videos we discussed one of his emails he sent to me about the punja, which is a mantra, or like abracadabra, a magical statement, a meditation, where Stephen Greer had invited people to go to the desert in California and do this mantra, a punja, Sanskrit, the writing that's in the hieroglyphics or the stones in Egypt or the desert in Baghdad. And they would do the mantra and were supposed to call forth the aliens, or in my opinion, spirits, fallen angels, demons, whatever. Glowing beings. So anyways, on this email I got from him, the crossing point of light. The new physics of interstellar travel and communication and how it relates to thought and consciousness. I'll just read from his email to me. The science of consciousness and higher states of consciousness and how it applies to us and to interstellar civilizations and their technologies. Why the key to contact with ETs, extraterrestrials, is understanding the nature of mind, thought, and trans-dimensional physics. This is PhD Stephen Greer, Dr. Stephen Greer, Exopolitics. So he's associating aliens with people higher consciousness, which, like the letter writing on the slates, contacting with the spirit world, I suppose would be a higher consciousness communication. So the meeting will be 2 to 4, questions and answers, DuPont Circle, Washington, D.C. Special the afternoon, limited to 45 people. We will be filming the workshop. All filming will be focused on Dr. Greer, but you will be able to sign a release, asked to sign a release. If you do not wish to be filmed, you will be able to sit towards the back. It's $85, so you get to go to a higher consciousness training seminar by Dr. Stephen Greer, who was doing the punja in the desert to call for alien beings or spirits, who is doing the Exopolitics serious video that's pretty popular on the internet, proving that UFOs and aliens exist and testimonies before Congress and all that. So a clear mixture of the UFO alien thing with the spirit world, which is rather interesting. So anyways, let me get on to my book thing. Book reviews of the book reviews. I think I'll start out with Henry Ford, the automaker. Should people believe Henry Ford when he bought the Dearborn Independent to try to get out news to the public about things that were going on in higher circles of government and business and conglomerates buying up everything in the United States, and especially the fact that they were coming from a certain group of people? And I am far from being any hateful thing towards Jewish people, because I believe a lot of Jewish people, if you go on Zionism and Images and search that on the internet, as I repeatedly say, you will see that many good Jewish people believing in God are fighting this Zionist, New World Order, New Age, satanic plan. They call it a conspiracy, but it's from my videos, it should be obvious it's a clear plan. So anyways, here's a couple of the books that I went over. You can look up on used book sites and get these books. I suspect as the future time goes by, it'll be harder and harder to find these, and more expensive. So it's by Henry Ford, The World's Foremost Problem, the International Jew. That's one heck of a statement. The world's foremost problem. And apparently Congress back then were having meetings about something called the Jewish problem. And then the other one here is The World's Foremost Problem, Volume 4. Aspects of Jewish Power in the United States. And this is Jewish activity in the United States. And I can go through these. I went through them online, but I'll just sum it up. Apparently Woodrow Wilson, prior to World War I, Jewish power, Woodrow Wilson pretty much tossed aside Congress, the House of Representatives, his own staff, and he was in cahoots with the influential Jewish people in the United States. And even planning the war and staffing up the industrial complex for weapons and all that stuff. Prior to the war, the United States ever getting into the war, and the Jewish activity in the United States, there's a lot of things about these people from Russia after the Russian Revolution. A lot of Yiddish Jewish folks were shipped to the United States. Whole barracks and training centers were set up in Europe. So I really think it would probably be a good idea for people to get these books. One of the things that I read in these two books, which I didn't do a video on, maybe I will in the future, but was these people, the bad Jewish folks, the Zionist people, the world domination folks, got into the liquor business prior to Prohibition, and they were forcefully taking over the whole industry, where quality whiskey or whatever was made in Kentucky bourbon or whiskeys, Tennessee, wherever the water was just right and the area was just right to make quality whiskey and other liquors that wouldn't harm people. But apparently when the people bought up all the labels and all the stills, and the ones they couldn't buy, I guess people conveniently died. But they did acquire all of them. And then they moved great bases of activity to places like Louisville or Chicago, where they shipped the good hooch whiskey and made a mixture of 10% good stuff with 90% some kind of synthetic alcohol or something lesser quality that really poisoned the people all across the United States with the remixed liquor, because they, usually to make good whiskey it takes 20 years or 10 years for it to ferment, 12 years. But they wanted to mass produce this, and anyways, from my reading, that's probably what caused Prohibition. The sicknesses, the people going crazy, getting drunk, going blind, because of the goal was only for money. The human beings were not counted. They were treated like cattle, and they were poison and toxins and everything. Get these books. Read that for yourself. Alright, let me get another book here. Another two books I keep talking about a lot. Volume 1 and Volume 2, To Eliminate the Opaque. And again, I'm just doing a summation here from holding the books and talking. But apparently, Rabbi Marvin Antelman, who was the leader of the Jewish Congress of the United States. So the leading Jewish guy, the rabbi, wrote these books. So I would venture to say what he had to say is very important. But I'll sum it up. There were, again, two, but I'll classify the Jewish people like everybody else into three groups. Like Christians, for example. There are Orthodox Christians. These are pious Christians, people who pray a lot and really try to lead a good life and believe in God. Orthodox. Then there are Christians, probably, like me, like I used to be, maybe I'm still a little, who are really not that seriously religious. We try to be good, or we really, we say we're Christians, but what do we really do? I didn't know what I know now. So you got, and then there are, of course, Christians, like you see in the movies, like the Mafia, that after they shoot somebody with a machine gun, they go like this, as if that's going to help after just murdering a bunch of people. So you got bad Christians. So you got bad Christians, you got good Christians, and then you got the average citizen that goes to church once in a while and doesn't take it so seriously. Three types. So with the Jewish community, it's the same. You got your Orthodox, seriously religious Jewish people, who are the ones who posted all that information on the Zionist site and images on the internet, like Yahoo, protesting the Zionism because the good Jews know that the bad Jews have switched from God and actually went into the spirit world and are in communicado, apparently, with fallen angels or spirits or demons, and from what's in the books, Lucifer, the devil himself. I think I'm making this up. Get these books, and he explains all. They're on the internet. Use book sites, $5, $10. It goes through the past 100, 200 years. Tells all. Even mentions the Illuminati. The Freemasonic people. The Satanists. The Frankists. The Sabbatans. All the spiritual stuff. Even with Hitler, in his diaries in these books, abducting a Jewish young man in Munich, Germany, having a sacrifice where they kill him with a young lady laying on an altar of the cult, expecting to bring forth a spiritual being or something, to impregnate the young girl, to seed the earth with supernatural beings or super powerful beings. And in his diary, the goal was to eliminate the earth of the existing human race, which they thought were inferior and useless. That's who's running your world. That's your Illuminati people. Can't make this stuff up. Read the books. And then we had the Palladians, a race of beings who I noticed had a particular, I'll just read one page here, 109. Palladians, one of the beings, the spiritual beings, or so-called aliens. We can't move because you can't move. You can't move because we prevented you from evolving by genetically rearranging you. This is what people in the New Age are sucking up and reading. We did that so you would not have the abilities that we have and use them to usurp us. Now, 500,000 years later, we are in a big crunch. We know we made one heck of a big mistake, if there are mistakes to be made. I'm reading from Barbara's book here. Shortly, you will discover your ability to create life and your ability to be gods. See how all this stuff jives, comes together? For 40 years, your scientists have been pretending that they are gods as they created life in underground laboratories as a reenactment of the Atlantean drama lesson. We all know they're into cloning and Monsanto genetically modified foods that are poisonous and toxic to humans. Your cells don't recognize that new DNA in those new corns that they create by splicing genes with herbicide-resistant or other kinds of DNA and pesticide-resistant DNA or resistant material. So herbicide and pesticide DNA-related or resistant materials are going into your food. So your human body obviously is going to reject that, just as if you were trying to eat a shoe. It That's not what the body wants, or poison, or a whole cup of salt. If you tried to eat it, it would probably kill you. Too much. So they're putting all those toxins in your food. And it says here, for 40 years, your scientists have been pretending that they are gods as they have created life in underground laboratories as a reenactment of the Atlantean drama lesson. Then we will watch you, and we will see if you, as you create life, you limit it. Will you be afraid that the life you create will be greater than you? Remember Hitler trying to create a super breed of people by impregnating it with the sacrifice of young men to bring forth a spirit? Will you want to forbid the life as you create to interact with the tree of knowledge or the tree of life? That would be the Hermetic stuff, or the Kabbalah we talked about. Once you start reading a lot, you get it. Or will you encourage the lives you create, which are your children, the future race of blue children? We did not realize in creating you that you had anything to teach us. You were slaves, you were gold diggers for gold for us. There were aliens that said they came here a long time ago and made people, and they made a big mistake. Alright, this book here was interesting. I did 2 videos on it for such a small book. Spoke at it at length because I was trying to get people to understand that the economic crisis in America today and the world is being controlled. When we go down, it's because they are taking us down. The current administration, page 46. I've just opened these books at random, by the way, right now. Avoided the issue of using military force in a civilian police capacity by signing a secret agreement with Canada on February 14, 2008. The Canadian-U.S. Civil Assistance Plan. This agreement allows Canadian troops to assist United States, law enforcement during civil unrest. The Canadian government also may summon the U.S. military for assistance during similar actions on Canadian soil. So because we have laws that our own military can't be used against the USA people, in 2008, Obama-Bush people made a treaty with Canada that says, well, your troops can come down here and quell this civil unrest. And if you have a problem, we'll send our troops to quell it. So, things people don't know. Who controls the money and the secret goings-on behind the scenes? Right now, the big issue is plagues, the Ebola. And Obama just signed something in the news the other day that anybody with upper respiratory obvious problems could be, I guess, arrested or sent to a FEMA camp or quarantined. And how many people? 10% of the people in the United States have asthma, a normal upper respiratory problem. And then we have the sky spraying. You can look up and go outside your house, probably right now. And whatever they could put into those chemicals, could start everybody with an upper respiratory problem. The government could say it's Ebola and demand you take a vaccine. And who knows what's in the vaccine? We already know. According to the Georgia U.S. Guidestones, they want to get rid of 6 billion people. And we got these interesting communications between these aliens. And Hitler says they want to get rid of all the humans. Anyways, I go ramble on, I know. Blue Blood, True Blood. We did this book. Stuart Swerdlow. And the bottom line is, I'll read one little paragraph here. Then she and my ex-promoter literally whisked me away to the giant rock a few miles into the desert. Georgia Van Tassel actually lived under this rock in a complex of rooms while the tower was being built. After his death, the government bulldozed the entrance, saying that it was too dangerous for the public. I saw that it is an entrance to the inner earth, and particularly to the underground reptilian nest. That would be aliens called reptilians, which are abundant under the Mojave Desert. So one of the things that got me about this book is he was into the Montauk Project on Long Island, out on the end, on a closed down or disguised military base where they were abducting thousands and thousands of young boys from all the cities and performing mind control programs on them. Even so-called, they said, gruesome experiments on them to learn all their gruesome science technologies, including time portals, they say, sending these children into future in the past with no way to retrieve them. But the brutality and the experiments and the mind control. One more thing I'll read here, page 77. Other global transmissions designed to install respect and non-violence towards reptilians include programs teaching children that reptilians are their friends. There are a vast number of such programs, with the Flintstones, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Barney, and Pokemon among the more well-known. So a lot of this stuff, they're going after your kids and people, grown-ups now, adults, with the TV programming. Alright, another book I wanted to discuss that I read a lot about. Timothy McVeigh. And what this book told me, that Timothy McVeigh, in my opinion, was assisted by the CIA or other governmental agencies. When he went into the military, he wanted to be a Green Beret. He was a motivated USA American. He wanted to be something. So apparently, it seems to me, if you read this book, that they, I guess, enrolled him in a secret program. You know how they do, they get people to be spies in the kind of the underground militias across the United States, and drugs and other things. So I think they trained him to be a spy and to work in cahoots with these people, and of course keep the CIA involved. And apparently he received monies from the government in the form of checks in his bank account. And it has a lot of so there's a lot of conspiracy here, and things are not what they seem. In the Oklahoma City bombing, there was a daycare and one place with the FBI where the records of a whole lot of people in the mafia-type, Illuminati-type, high government places were under investigations. So somebody at the top wanted all those records burnt. And even with the daycare center in that building, apparently killing children is part, as far as we've been able to see, is part of a satanic ritual. So he was the perfect patsy. So, you start reading and reading and reading, and the stuff starts to come together. World Revolution, we did this a little bit. Nestor Webster. World Revolution. Basically, it's just, they've been doing this for a long time. Looking for something here to read that might be interesting. Marx and I are old acquaintance. That would be Karl Marx. I met him for the first time in Paris in 1844. And it says here, there was never, however, any frank intimacy between us. Our temperaments did not permit it. He called me a sentimental idealist. He was right. I called him a vain man, perdifish, and crafty. Perfidios, perficious. It is easy to read between the lines here to see how from the beginning of the Balkan was simply a tool in the hands of Marx. The shrewd German Jew clearly recognized the value of the Russian as a huge dynamic force to be made use of and then cast aside when he'd served his purpose. Before the revolution in 1848, Balkan, like Marx, was expelled from Paris. So like today, with all the goings-on in the world, where they're seemingly trying to set up a United States revolution, blacks against whites, poor against rich, gays against straights, Americans hating Islam, immigration against Mexicans and other South Americans. Behind the scenes, there really are forces doing some very malicious activities and promoting and planning And a lot of things that people see in the news is lies, and nobody pays attention. And another book, Murder by Injection. The plague and the vaccine threats right now are a little off the chart, even with Obama signing the legislation that people with upper respiratory symptoms could be detained, apprehended, incarcerated, FEMA camps, quarantined. But this book, Eustace Mullins was a journalist in Washington, D.C. and a well-known writer. Page 155. After overseeing the installation of sodium fluoride equipment in most of the nation's large cities, this was done by the Rockefellers, Eustace Mullins discloses all. An interest in which Chase Manhattan Bank showed a crucial concern. Why would Chase Manhattan Bank show a crucial concern of putting fluoride in the water across the United States and all the cities? One thing I know, fluoride in the water causes your pineal gland, between the two lobes of your brain, looks like a little pine cone, pineal gland, causes it to calcify instead of being a clear liquid with little crystals, which I believe are ways to communicate with the higher world, dreaming or spirit world, praying. When they calcify, those communications are cut off. Just an interesting occultic thing to know. So anyways, being that the Rockefellers were into the Illuminati occultic thing, Kabbalah, Hermetic and all that, they knew this, so did Hitler. He put it into the prisoners' water. It made them lethargic, real slow, you know. So they weren't sharp and intelligent. That's what the fluoride does to the humans. So they, Chase Manhattan Bank showed a crucial interest in this. Oscar Ewing retired on Chapel Hill, North Carolina in 1953. Here he busied himself with the building of a 7,800-acre complex of office buildings under the name of the Research Triangle Corporation, triangle being a key Masonic symbol. So two things in this book that got me was, one is the Rockefellers, Chase Bank, and a bunch of officials during the early 20s and 30s and 40s going way out of their way, and after that, putting fluoride in everybody's water, which makes people lethargic, calcifies the pineal gland, and who knows what else. And the other thing that this thing taught me, this book, was from the early 1901, 1902 and forward, Rockefeller went out of his way to get rid of allopathy, homeopathy, and to bring about allopathy. I always get those two backwards. One being cures with herbs and medicines and things like that. That was known for thousands of years. Paracelsus back in the 1300s or 1400s was running all around Europe, helping kings with gout with pineapple juice or cherry juice. In other words, homeopathy, or, different things that would cure the human body of different kinds of ailments. And then the Rockefeller went to discredit all these doctors all across the Midwest and in the United States, accused them of quackery, and demanded they cease and desist, and even probably had them shut down and arrested if they didn't. So they couldn't sell their herbs and all these other medicines, and they had to go to allopathy, which was curing people with surgery, cutting them open with a knife. Well, we all know later on now, the pharmaceuticals, with all that homeopathy, have patented and control all those recipes for cure-alls. So it was basically a gigantic move to dominate that industry and get it out of the hands of the citizens and controlled by the pharmaceutical companies today, making billions of dollars selling people pills. An interesting story in this book on those two issues and others. And we did this book, Night Siege. We're from 1883, 84. No one even knew about it. For a couple years, whole towns would come out on the streets up in the Hudson Valley, New York, Connecticut area, Massachusetts. And on the back it says here, some say it's larger than a football field. The color seems to be dark metallic gray with a brilliant flashing light that form a V. Alright, one thing is clear, something is in the air above the homes, the highways, the ponds, the very backyards, and one of the most densely populated suburban areas of the USA. What is going on? So a lot of people I've talked to that didn't even know from 83 to 84, a little bit of 85, whole cities would see these gigantic disc-shaped, triangle-shaped craft in the sky blocking out the sun. Used bookstores, news bookstores, read these things for yourself. And then we talked about Stan Deyo, PhD, very smart guy, studies religion, studies the UFO issues, studies religion, and like what here it says here, the 3 5-pointed stars that appear when the triangle covered the other 10 stars also represent Jaboon or Jehovah in the Masonic schools. The 5-pointed stars can represent the 5 Masonic points of fellowship, the 5 human senses, the 5 celestial Buddhas, the 5 great evils of Buddhism, ignorance, wrath, death, malignity, and envy, and the 5 precepts of Buddhism. So he talks about a lot of interesting stuff in this book about the Illuminati, the Council of Foreign Relations. So another just good example of a guy smarter than me writing a book telling all that there is a conspiracy going on, there is a secret group in the world. It seems like something's going on. And then of course we read this book, reviewed this book, The Gold of the Gods, where Van Doniken goes down into Ecuador, sits in the caves where they have all kinds of 3-foot tall gold plaques or statues like this. He was a well-known archaeologist, investigator, researcher. What really got me on this one is that pyramid certainly looks like the one on the dollar. Here's another one here. And the snake. So it seems like for thousands of years the same conspiracy forces, be they entities called reptilians or Palladians or something, from another dimension, or even living on this planet, in this planet, I don't know. But the details are there. I don't believe Eric von Doniken was lying, and all these other authors like Stan Deyo. And then the Great Britain and Jewish and Palestine book we went through, showing that there's a whole lot more behind the scenes, especially with the Balfour Agreement that the Jews, Rothschilds, Rockefeller, bankster folks said to the UK, if we give you money so you can win the war with Germany, you will give us Palestine to create our state of Israel, which was initiated by a book called The Jewish State, Theodore Herschel, who worked for a company, printing company owned by the Rothschilds. So how America was dragged into World War I by the Zionist lobby. We did a video on that book. The Philadelphia Experiment and Other UFO Conspiracies. We did this, I think. And I talked about abducting kids and all that stuff. Here's a funny picture. So what they did here is Dr. John Van Neumann, visiting professor from Princeton University in 1933, is believed to have been the brains behind the theory which enabled the military to make one of our large ships completely disappear. That would be the Philadelphia Experiment, where they turned on a radar system They had like 6 or 7 transmitters, microwaves, mounted around the ship. So when they turned it on, brrr, the whole ship disappeared. But not only that, it interdimensionally moved 100 miles up the shore. And when they found it, some of the people had moved on the ship, and half of their body was in the steel plate and the other half was in the corridor. Of course, the guys died. Horrible situation if it's true. So there was a lot going on here that Brad Steger, Alfred Bielek, and Sherry Hansen Steiger talk about. And you can go on YouTube and see some of these people do videos and talk shows and all that. So again, another example of something strange going on. And another book. Pardon my phone call. I do work from home. Henry P.H.D. Macau, a Canadian Jewish author. Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. He tells all. A Jewish PhD, intelligent man, has a website. So I'm going to just read you one little conclusion here. The Jewish conspiracy is really the half-Jewish conspiracy, as I have been always saying. Many prominent members intermarry or are the products of intermarriage. John Kerry is an example. Many are Jewish and many are not. What they all really have in common is loyalty to the Masonic Illuminati order, which has subjugated the planet by manufacturing war. PhD Henry Macau, Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world. Get this book, read it, and you will be getting a mouthful of information. He says a lot. Obviously, part of this strategy was to martyr assimilated non-Zionist Jews in order to hoodwink the rest of the world into supporting Zionism. That is why Hitler's always being mentioned in my research. That is why Hitler pretended to be racially purist while being part Jewish himself, having many part Jewish associates and making thousands of exceptions to his race policies. His race policy mirrored the Jewish one. He had to convince Jews and the rest of the world that Jews are hated on the basis of race alone and must have a national home. So like I've been saying all along, it's all planned. The Holocaust as mind control. An invaluable book to read. If you don't believe in a conspiracy, you need to get this book. ClimateGate. The Marijuana Conspiracy. Project Bluebeam. From the Dot Connector magazine, compiled by Paul Bondarowski, however you say his name, I apologize. See the pyramid on the shield? Look on your dollar bill. What's Project Bluebeam? The big show, space show in the sky. The second step in the NASA Bluebeam project, pardon my speech here, involves a gigantic space show with three-dimensional optical holograms and sounds, laser projection of multiple holographic images to different parts of the world, each receiving a different image according to the predominating regional, national, religious faith. The new God's voice will be speaking in all languages. In order to understand that, we must study various Secret Services research done in the past 25 years. So they have worldwide computer systems. I think they have one called The Beast, actually. And satellites in space, and they've created all these movies in sci-fi, Space Odyssey, Star Trek, Independence Day. They're preparing and programming the people for Project Bluebeam. which basically people will look up in the sky and think God is coming. Remember the Reappearance of the Christ by Alice Bailey book I looked at? Published by Lucifer Publishing Company, called Lucas Publishing Company, but it's Lucifer Publishing Company, which is the god of the Illuminati and the Masonic lodges, as said in the Kabbalah and Hermetic Teachings and Morals and Dogma by Albert Pike and Helena Blavatsky's books and so many other New Age textbooks. All this conspiracy stuff and all kinds of researchers like Paul here, putting together proof and publishing books so people can wake up. Climate gate. We are all familiar with global warming. Or is it global cooling? And then they want to really confuse us and they say, it's climate change. So you know me, I had to go get some pictures. And this is going to blow you away. After World War I, and the UK wasn't going to honor the Balfour Agreement and give them Palestine to the Rockefeller Rothschilds, Zionist, occultic, Lucifer-worshipping New World Order folks. So World War II was necessary, which was also written by Albert Pike in a letter to a friend in Europe back in 1896 or 86. So after World War I, and all the soldiers came back home from the war in America, World War I was like 1914 to 18, 17, 19. So they came back from World War I. Heroes. The United States helped save the day in Europe. Britain was about to fall. France was in trouble, and Germany was on the move. So the Illuminati, the Rothschilds, said to the UK, we will get the United States to help you. And they had all their agents in conspiracy with President Woodrow Wilson. And a lot of money probably changed hands and bribery. And so America was secretly conned into the war. The propaganda in the news was fake, but to rile up the American people and make them patriotic. Now, of course, the American people didn't know the stuff was fabricated and faked and lies. You know, they would blow up their own ship with 100 people on board and say the enemy did it just to get the American people on board. So anyways, after the war, and things weren't working out, what did they do to the American people? The Great Depression. 1929, 28, 1930, 32, 33. After World War I. No jobs. Somebody was crashing the economy, pulling money out of the economy. The Federal Reserve, created in 1913, owned by the Rothschilds and Rockefellers and Chases and Morgans and all the Illuminati New World Order folks, with the throttle, just like a throttle on an engine, could put money in the economy or pull it back to create the situation of the Great Depression. And when everybody couldn't pay their bills, who do you suppose got all the assets? All the farms. Look how people had to live. Look what the reward was. And all they had to do is print money. Solve the problem. But they didn't want to solve the problem. When people were losing everything, somebody was getting everything. And they were getting ready for World War II. Meanwhile, at the same time, and this is my very important point, where it says climate gate on this book, and they say we have global warming today. Well, during the 1920s, there was something called the Dust Bowl. No rain, no crops, no food. Farmers were losing everything. Now one must remember, you know, we're talking about the Palladians, aliens. Did they have any way to control the weather back then? To cause the cities across America to have dust storms like this? This is me asking crazy questions. The banks controlled the finances of the world. They obviously were taking complete control over everything. Hitler was growing in Germany at the time. They were preparing for World War II. They were arming Germany, financing Germany, staffing him up, building him up, while Americans, as you can see on the top right-hand corner of the lady there, were all completely broke and destitute. I propose it was on purpose. Again, they talk about global warming 80 years ago, 1920s, 90 years ago. Today, they're pulling our leg. They're lying to us. Today, we have nothing like they had back in the 1920s. That was global warming. This is what happened in the 20s. Dust storms. Nothing grew. It doesn't even compare to today. And then after the Dust Bowl period, everything went back to normal. It had nothing to do with people. So at the same time of they had Dust Bowl, they had the Great Economic Depression. Consider the irony of both of those things. Prior to World War II, it's almost a spiritual, biblical thing. Why were all these people after World War I not employed? Why was a lot of money from the banks, here's your answer too, sending a lot of money to Germany to get them ready for World War II, while people back home were starving unnecessarily? Could this happen again? Jobs, 50% of America are on food stamps. When they cut that off, do you realize how fast the people will start rioting across America? And they were already arming up our police departments like SS stormtroopers everywhere. Same problem back during the Great Depression. Look at that. Interesting. It seems like they're preparing for World War III, and they've got the global warming thing going on, the sky spraying, the HARP systems. Why don't I take a break for a second and talk about that? So they got this stuff called HARP in the United States right now. It's about 6 or 7 or maybe more of these strategically placed throughout the world. They're like gigantic microwave ovens. You wouldn't stick your head in a microwave oven, would you? Well, if they turn that on, you may as well have. And it's causing all kinds of weird stuff with the clouds and the weather. And you can look this up, HARP images on the internet. You know the routine. Been watching my videos, you'll see all these images. Weather warfare, but also microwaving people, making them get agitated, go riotous. They can turn a switch and make that happen. So they got HARP, and it says here they can turn it on and cause riots in different cities. All these big transmitters, even on platforms in the ocean, floating HARP systems. That's a moving one. And you can kind of tell when they're turning one on. You can see this in the sky sometimes when they're running microwaves over your city. Slowly killing people, I wonder. Imaging radiometer, classic 30 Hertz radiometer. Here's another system. Another one. Strategically located all over the world. And they can cause this. You look up in the sky, I've seen this before. You can tell when they're turning it on. That one's kind of weird. High Frequency Active Research Project. I like the names they give these things. HARP. Oh, they say they're benign. We're just experimenting. Look what they can do. A beam aimed at the sky. HAARP. Images website. HARP Brazil, HARP Russia, HARP China, HARP India, HARP Australia, Area 51 HARP. In the news lately, you know, they're talking about Ebola and preparing, even sending hazmat suits all over the area for the officials to put them on when the Ebola comes. And it just makes you wonder what they're doing. That's a HARP system where they have people with equipment measuring the intensity. And you can see where they're aiming the HARP system at. And it changes the weather. And then, of course, they interact that with the sky spraying. And sometimes it becomes very obvious. I've seen this in the sky with the colors of the chemicals. And I've seen this in the sky, the crazy patterns of the storm clouds. And I've seen this in the sky. I've photographed many of these myself. These are on the weather control image websites or HARP. Photographed this here in North Carolina, Florida, Maine, and New Mexico, and many places. Sky spraying just like that over your major cities, which could be happening in your city right today. If you go outside and look, you will see that there is something going on. So anyways, getting back to these pictures. This there, you know, looks like they're getting ready for World War III. So they were getting ready for World War II. And people were penniless. Black Gale, again Howells, Southwest, Black Blizzard, New Mexico. And they're talking about aliens and spacecraft and all that stuff. You just wonder, were there forces at work causing this weather and this destruction in the United States? Evil forces. If they want us to believe in aliens and UFOs, and we know who they worship now, and the Illuminati and the governments involved, and Hitler was involved, I'm saying in the 1920s, could they cause... We know the banks controlled the economic situation, so people were homeless. Guess they didn't need jobs. They were getting them ready for World War II where they could go die and fight. Poor families everywhere. Crazy weather. If there were aliens, did somebody manufacture this weather like the HARP systems we have today? Look at that dust storm. And they say we have global warming now. Do I need to repeat? We have nothing going on now that they had back then. Had nothing to do with man-made controlled situation. Demand winter relief. See, people were so poor. The banks had all the money. The rich were getting richer back then, just like they are now. Every time they crash the economy, everybody loses everything and the banksters get everything. And they need all that money to prepare for another world war. Almost unbelievable. People want to say global warming. This here should be proof that there's no such thing as global warming going on now. This happened 90 years ago, 80 years ago, and it is not happening now. This was a global warming event whether it's alien manufactured or secret projects from Hitler and the Rothschilds and Illuminati, I don't know. Maybe it's magic. Maybe they were contacting demons, creating weather, just like you see on Indiana Jones and stuff. The magic, you know. Hoover's Poor Farm Tobacco Fund. So the poor people back then, and the people and the rich people were getting richer back then, filthy rich. Rockefellers and all those people were cashing in on everything, farms, property, all over the United States after World War I. Could this happen again? Could this happen again? Remember, they knew they were preparing for World War II. This is just prior, 1929, 1930. World War II started in 1940. Stock market crashes. Again, and the wealthy made all the money. They crash it on purpose. They take all the money from the people. They crash it on purpose. Did you hear me? They crash it on purpose. The people suffer. They're preparing for World War II. This is after World War I. The banksters, the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, all those people owned the Federal Reserve, which was created in secret in 1913, prior to World War I. So all these economic issues are controlled, and the powers that be get all the money for their wars. And the people get to die, and starve, and be driven into poverty. Intentional, in my opinion, without a doubt. Look at this. Is this going to happen again? Global warming, they say in 2014, had nothing on 1920, 22. Nothing. Farmers who topsoil blew away joined the caravans, 66 going to California. It's amazing what people don't know. So when they talk about global warming, 90 years ago was 1,000 times crazy weather and everything. They didn't say global warming. The poor man's store, buy, sell, and trade. So used clothing stores and those kinds of businesses really boomed during Depression times. Man-made Depression times. Remember, the Rockefellers, Rothschild banksters, Chases, and all those people control the Federal Reserve. They print billions of dollars to give to themselves. And they have a dust storm here back in 1920-something that... Now that would be called global warming threat. We have nothing like that now. We don't want trouble, we just want fair living for our families. But they're going to take that away from us. They are taking it away from us in the United States right now. They took it away then, prior to World War II. People lived in shanty little towns created out of boxes. Just like they do in Iraq and Syria and all over Palestine and everywhere right now, to the people they're killing in the Middle East. Yep, and the poor children suffer the worst. Innocent victims of the Illuminati, the cult that hijacked the world, This goes all the way back, all the 1900s. These people caused all that turmoil. If they want to talk about aliens or some kind of magical powers, can they do that? We read the book, Are the Facts of Psychic Science. Can they do that? With the technology today, I think they can do that pretty much as a given with the HARP systems. Here's a sign. Next time, take the train and relax. These two poor guys walking down the highway. Meanwhile, there is a dust storm a-brewing. So if you believe in global warming today, you're missing something. 80 years ago, 90 years ago, there was a weather anomaly that takes the cake. I think you'll agree. Surviving the Dust Bowl. So I just thought it was interesting to put in perspective a real global warming event 80, 90 years ago. What they got going on today has got nothing on that. Forbidden Science, we did this book. And again, this is a tell-all book. There's a lot of situations where people invent alternate energy or different physics devices. And the government says due to national security they have to declare them top secret, confidential. And if you didn't comply, you might wind up dead. Prison. The fight for alien technology. So anyways, here we got Douglas Kenyon. I read this book. Following the model of his best-selling Forbidden History or Forbidden Religion, Douglas Kenyon has assembled 42 essays by 19 researchers for his bi-monthly journal Atlantic Rising, material that explores science and technology that has been suppressed by the orthodox scientific community, which let's just call it what it is, the Illuminati, the people who rule the world, the people who are into the Kabbalah, the Hermetic, worshipping Lucifer, doing magic, sacrificing people, orthodox scientist community. From a true function of the Great Pyramid to the megaliths at Napo Playa. Anyways, telepathy, ESP, in this book. Then we went through this book. The U.S. is building underground tunnels everywhere, loading them up with food and gear, and truck drivers are telling the truth. They got these gigantic machines that dig tunnels all across the United States. Billions, trillions of dollars in the last 20 years to build these facilities. My question is why? What are they planning? That's a good question, isn't it? Letters on Occult Meditation by Alice Bailey. And one of her other books said Lucas Publishing, which is formerly Lucifer. This is Lucas Trust. Which, if you look on Wikipedia, was when it was originally created by Alice Bailey. It was called Lucifer Trust, to honor Lucifer, and then dedicated to the Tibetan teacher. So let me see if I got this straight. Letters on Occult Meditation by somebody who studies the Kabbalah and Helena Blavatsky's secret doctrine, magic science, communicating with demons and spirits. And I'll read this one little page here. There are also 7 mantrams. You know what a mantram is? A mantra? That are known to the 3 great lords and the heads of the hierarchy, whereby they call them the 7 planetary logi, or the 7 spirits before the throne. Do you know what a spirit before the throne is? as they are called in the Christian Bible, one of the mantrams which causes contact with the logis of our planet. So can they use these mantrams like Dr. Stephen Greer uses to call forth the spirits? Do they have mantrams to cause those Dust Bowl storms prior to World War II? And the Federal Reserve owned by the Rothschilds, Rockefellers, Chases, and Banksters and Illuminati, causing the economic destruction at the same time? Are all these things created by these evil forces and entities? One of these mantrams which causes contact with the logos of our planet is known to the adepts as well. So the scale is mounted and the words are sounded forth until we reach the mantram of our planet, which is based on the key of the earth. And the body is a phrase which sums up our evolution. Each planet has some note or phrase whereby it guides may contact their planetary logos. The 7 logi, in their turn, have their available ritual and form whereby they can communicate with the threefold Lord of the solar system. This is done always 4 times a year or when urgent need arises. So they're contacting the spirit world. They have super magical powers. Alice Bailey, published by Lucifer Publishing Company. Do I have to spell it out for anybody? And they're building tunnels. And they have Project Bluebeam, where they're going to create big holographic images in the sky. So people think that the Christ has reappeared. And then, of course, we did talk about Maitreya. Messages from Maitreya the Christ that's supposed to appear. I'll read a little bit of this. Crazy stuff. All the same thing. All the occultic, all the Illuminati, all the Kabbalah, all the mantras. Good evening, my dear friends. Page 150. I have come once more in a way to tell you that my mission proceeds as planned. Naught hinders the progress of this holy work. And soon for yourselves you will see the fruit of my efforts. Remember, Alice Bailey, The Reappearance of the Christ. This is the Christ, published by Lucifer Publishing Company. This is the stuff the New Agers read. The time has come to begin the process of change. That's what Obama says. To transfer the life of men in such a way that the God in man shines forth. So it sounds like they want to create the superhuman man, where Hitler wanted to have sacrifice a young Egyptian gypsy and impregnate the girl with some kind of entity DNA. Anyways, moving on. This, my friends, is not difficult of accomplishment, for within you all sits a divine being. My task will be to invoke from you that shining light and take you to its source. My masters work also in their various centers and thought that precedes the plan. My work is to organize that plan in such a way that the least cleavage results. Much that is loved must go. Did you hear that? Much that is loved must go. Cling not to old forms. Incredible stuff. Common Sense, Thomas Paine. Page 33. O ye that love mankind, ye that dare oppose, not only the tyrant but the tyranny, stand forth. Every spot of the old world is overrun with oppression. Freedom has been hunted round the globe. Asia, Africa have long expelled her. Europe regards her like a stranger. England hath given her warning to depart. O receive the fugitive and prepare for the time of asylum of mankind. Just interesting books to read about stuff. And then we talked about the Freemasons and their pamphlets. I did some in my other video. Here's a couple more. And without a doubt, they have lodges all over the world. 1962 pamphlet. And the lodges here are in New Mexico, Louisiana, Kentucky, Texas, North Carolina, Montana, Puerto Rico, Virgin Islands, Utah, Wyoming, pretty much every place in the world. Texas, China, Arkansas, Georgia, Florida, Miami, Orlando, Panama, Pensacola, St. Augustine. So they're all over the world. And these books that keep talking about, this is 1970, is Ridding, says right here on the back, the American public school, non-partisan, non-sectarian, efficient, democratic for all the children of all the people. That's what it says. These are the people who are worshiping Lucifer. They want Christianity out of the school. I wonder why. The meditation room, we went through this book, has in the United Nations, is designed, you guessed it, like the Kabbalah, Illuminati, witchcraft, Alice Bailey, Luciferianism, all their designs. And then, of course, the Citizens Rule Book. We talked about the Constitution, the Bill of Rights. What they don't want you to know, when, let's say they have somebody gets arrested for owning a firearm, after they've made them illegal, which is illegal because the Constitution says you have the right to bear arms. So you as a jurist sitting in that trial, even though they proved that the guy has a gun, you can vote not guilty because the law, in fact, is illegal. That is your power. They can't make you vote guilty if they take a picture with the guy holding the gun. If the law is not a legal law, it's a not guilty verdict. So they'll round up a lot of people to sit on juries when they start beheading everybody, calling them guilty when they shouldn't be doing that. Is that what's coming? Theodore Herschel, the Jewish state, started the program. Well, it was going on before then, just more propaganda to convince the people to do it. But as we said before, published in 1896, Theodore Herschel, who was working for Rothschild's publishing company. How convenient was that? A leading Jewish person writes the Jewish state at the behest probably of his boss, the Rothschilds. The Bolsheviks and the Germans we talked about. How when the Germans were treated badly in Russia, they all went down to Germany prior to World War I. And Germany took them in, embraced them. What did they do in return? They turned on Germany because they wanted their homeland, and they didn't think Germany was going to give them Palestine as quickly as the UK was going to make a deal with them and give them Palestine for the state of Israel for Theodore Herschel's Jewish state. So Germany was bringing them in, rescuing them from the torturous situation in Russia. They got in Germany, they turned on Germany, became spies. Germany fell and the UK won the war. And then after the war, prior to World War II, all these Jews still living in Germany were now suspect people because it was published in the main newspapers that the Jews had turned on Germany and become a traitor to the country that was rescuing them, according to this book. Now this is the rock on which we split, where the fundamental difference between British and German ethics comes in. All is not fair in civilized lovemaking or in civilized war. Poisoning wells, mixing hooks with horses' fodder, firing on ambulances are not legitimate methods of fighting. They are violations of the laws of warfare. And to poison the mind of a whole population is not legitimate propaganda. Well, I can tell you right now in the USA with this New Age propaganda, the gay agenda, the New Age agenda, do as thou wilt as the wickedest man, Aleister Crowley said, the Satanists who killed children. They're mind programming the American people. And to poison the minds of a whole population is not legitimate propaganda. And a lot of the American people don't even know they're being mind controlled. Herr Kurland says England adopted the same methods, that barrels of English gold were distributed amongst the German Navy to bring about a mutiny. Well, there you have it. The last part of the 50 series, part 4 of 4. Freemasonry and Satanism, the facts of science fiction, psychic science, and book review. And I thank you for watching my video. I hope it's been informative. If this were a trial in a courtroom and it was time to give a guilty or not guilty verdict as to the conspiracy for the New World Order, what would you do? How would you vote right now? That there is such a devious plan afoot? That when they crash the dollar and crash the system and cause all the famine and cause all the economic distress and poverty and take all the wealth, are they guilty of that? Is Henry Mackay right? PhD, Jewish author in Canada. The Cult That Hijacked the World. Rabbi Marvin Adelman. All these books. How would you vote? Guilty or not guilty? Is there a plan afoot, and are we all in danger? On this September 20th, I think, what is it, 20, Saturday, 2014. Beautiful weather in North Carolina. Is it the calm before the storm? I think we all need to wake up and pray to God to save us, protect us. There is a proverb that says, whoever seeks God seeks refuge in God, and he will be the shield. So I will think we need God to be our shield if these demonic forces, the Illuminati, the Luciferians, the occultists, the Kabbalists, the witchcraft, this, all this stuff. If these forces are real, we are in trouble, and only God can save us. And we can save ourselves a little bit by waking up. Thank you for watching my video. It's taken me a year to get the whole series done, and I hope it's helpful to people. May God help us all, I pray.